Hello, everyone, and welcome to Story 2. I'm Dr. Carol Barash, the founder and CEO. At Story 2, we've taught more than 250,000 students how to unlock the science of storytelling, to tell their stories out loud, to tell the stories that define them out loud, and to use the science of storytelling to improve their speaking, writing, college admissions, and career search. We are here today with my dear friend and colleague, Joe Latimer, who is the Assistant Dean of Admissions and Outreach at the University of Rochester. That title doesn't begin to cover all of the bases that he covers in his job. He recruits from many, many places, which he will tell you about. And he's responsible for ensuring the diversity of the incoming class at Rochester. And so that covers a lot of things as well, and it overlaps with financial aid. So we're going to talk tonight specifically about COVID and how COVID has affected admissions at Rochester and more generally. But Joe, why don't you just start us off by introducing yourself and telling us what a typical day is like, and maybe you could just tell us a little bit also that letter, that really powerful letter that you wrote to all the students, in your list of students who you're talking to about how they should think about admissions and college this year.
Thank you, Carol. It's great to be back on stage with you. I'd like to acknowledge first that our thoughts are on those affected by wildfires in California, Oregon, and Washington, storms in the Southeast, spikes in COVID cases across the Midwest and on college campuses, and of course, those fighting for racial justice across the nation, including 13 straight days in Rochester, New York. It is in this context that we remain hopeful and seek to help students navigate this journey to college. Again, thanks, Carol, for having me. So as Assistant Dean for Enrollment Diversity and Outreach at the University of Rochester, essentially I oversee that which we initiate to create and sustain an inclusive and accessible environment for students and families, and processes that do the same. The efforts aren't sustainable if our institutions, though, are not prepared to be just as accessible and inclusive as the students that we recruit. It's one thing to bring diverse students to campus. It's another to ensure that our faculty programs of study, support services, and other services meet the students where they are, that there are individuals who look like them, speak their native language, share their same religious beliefs and gender identities. Therefore, I also work on several committees to ensure success in this area. But I'm also your typical admissions officer, right? I visit high schools, I attend college fairs, I conduct admissions interviews. I have this New York City counselor breakfast where over 80 counselors are in attendance any given fall, and we're talking about opportunities at the University of Rochester. I read applications for admission. I'm a first reader, I'm a second reader, I'm in committee. And so those are the kinds of day-to-day things that we are involved in an office of admissions, attempting to help young people and families navigate our respective processes. The email that you referenced was titled "Of the Pandemic and Protests," and that was trying to acknowledge with our community of prospective students that the world in which we share is upside down, and that I wanted to impart empathy and compassion with my audience. I think it's important for young people to understand that we as admissions officers are human beings with feelings and emotions, that we're not, these individuals sitting behind desks demanding that these young people be perfect and, navigate our admissions and financial aid processes in a way that, deem them worthy of consideration. And that email went out to 80,000 individuals, and it was well received. I got some really good feedback on it. And again, it was just a way to help these young people understand that we know what you're going through, and to seek guidance and support specifically from us in admissions as we need it, because we are available to young people as they navigate, like I said.
Yeah, I think that, people are in admissions because they really believe in young people and believe in all the things that college can make possible for people. My parents were first generation college students. My grandmothers didn't go to even finish high school, and then I have a PhD in English literature. So a lot can happen over a couple of generations with the right fuel and the right passion. Joe, I wonder if you could begin by just telling students who are here, what's the same this year? Like, what about admissions? There's a lot that's different, and we'll talk about that next. But what are some of the things that are you're seeing that are really just the same this year as always?
Look, Carol, we have to recruit a class of students. We have to generate applications for admission, 18,000 of them. We have to, ensure that we enroll 1,450 first-year students. There's several hundred transfer students that we have to pay attention to. So, we're attending college fairs, scheduling presentations at high schools, conducting admissions interviews. All of these things are done virtually, of course. We're not leaving the confines of our safe environments to go out and meet with prospective students and families, but we are scheduling all of these activities because nothing around the number of students that we seek to enroll is different. And that's true of all colleges and universities. We have to recruit a class in order to stay viable. And so I think young people can feel confident that we are seeking to interface with them, to get to know them, to present all the opportunities afforded so that they can, put their best foot forward as applicants to our institution. So that's what has stayed the same.
Okay, now, like, what are the big things that are really different? If I'm a student, if I'm a high school student, high school senior, applying to college, maybe trying to decide whether even I should apply to college. Like, what's different, and how, what's different this year? Let's start there.
Sure. Yep. The amount of online content is really impressive. I mean, if there's anything positive that has come out of this situation, is the fact that we've learned that we can generate content and put it online for consumption. Mm-hmm. Online opportunities used to be back burner approaches for those who could not visit campus. I mean, the idea was that if you build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. Not everybody could do that, but it was kind of this thing that you thought about later on. Now we're doing everything online. These interviews are, like I said, done virtually too. And so the goal is to create so much online content aimed at helping students and families learn more about us. And there's, including student testimonials and virtual tours. And so that's what's different. There are some places that are open. As a matter of fact, there's a college down the street from where I sit that's open. That, I think, is the exception to the rule. And so we are, and by the way, they're open in a safe way that, meets protocol and procedures. But the rest of us are closed for business and meeting students online. The struggle is for students who have technological barriers to us, right? There's that technological divide that's always talked about. Which
is really an economic divide, right? Like,
yep.
Right now, more than ever, if you don't have access to technology, you're really cut off from a lot of other things. More than even before, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Also, what's different is that we're trying to remove barriers for students more than ever before. So we keep reading about colleges and universities that are moving more and more towards being test optional. Test.org, I was on their website earlier today. more than 2/3 of four-year colleges and universities in the US will not require applicants to submit ACT or SAT scores for fall 2021 admission. That's 1,570 of us.
Wow.
57 colleges are test blind. And Carol, when a college goes test optional, they normally don't revert to requiring tests. So I'm wondering if this is one of these moments where we're going to see a big change in the landscape of college admissions moving forward, that they're going to find that nothing's broken without testing. And so I think for future classes, they might feel confident that exams might not be, something that's required of young people applying to colleges and universities.
It certainly would it certainly frees up a lot of time for students to do other things if they're not trying to hit a certain test score first.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of time to do other kinds of things.
For sure.
So I'm wondering, how does it change the way you've been test flexible? Rochester's been test flexible now for a long time. And so students can make a case for how they want you to think about their tests, and they can put in other tests than SATs or ACTs, and but are you going further this year, or you're sticking with test flexible?
So under our test, so we were test flexible for many years. Test flexible is this idea that I have to submit test scores, but I'm going to decide which ones to submit. 2 or more APs, 2 or more subject tests, SAT or ACT. If you were, applying from a country that has a national exam, you can submit that national exam.
Mm-hmm.
Under test optional, we're test flexible or don't submit scores at all. So we just ended our first year of being a test optional institution. Mm-hmm. And I think approximately 20% of our applicants didn't submit test scores. And so that was the manner in which we read applications for admission this past year. When you applied and informed us how you were going to be applying under test flexible or our test optional policy, once you hit submit, you couldn't change your mind. Mm-hmm. To either submit the scores that you said you would submit or not submit them at all.
Mm-hmm. I had a student today ask me if it would be used against them if they had standardized test scores this year.
I don't see it used against students this year. There are some students who were able to take the exam and many students who were unable to take the exam. And it's this idea that we want to meet students where they are and remove obstacles in their way of applying to places like us.
So what are your best recommendations for students, for parents? I see a couple educators on here, just for everybody, just like to navigate this fall, like admissions this time, which is definitely a completely unique and unprecedented, as everyone says. How do you? What are the most important, like really 2 or 3 things that a student should do, a parent should do, maybe even educators should do, like this fall, because of the unique challenges that we're facing right now?
I guess, every college and university is doing all that they can to ensure that students have the opportunity to apply. Pardon me. And so everybody's policies are going to be different. So for example, I know of some ramblings on the NACAC listserv. This is the National Association for College Admissions Counseling listserv, where there are schools who are saying, if you can only get 1 recommendation for admission, that's fine. You don't need 2, you don't need 3. If all you can do is get us 1, that's okay. A school like the University of Rochester, we just put online an application fee waiver request form. This is a request for students to get an application fee waiver to apply to the University of Rochester without it being confirmed that they meet the criteria for a fee waiver by a third party. You just complete that form, you check the boxes that are appropriate to your circumstances, and we will waive the fee for you to apply to the University of Rochester. If there, and so there are nuances to what's being required, and I would try, every student should pay attention to what's being required of them to apply to the 7, 8, 9 schools that they're applying to. And if there are difficulties with meeting those requirements, that they should reach out to the director of admissions, the dean of admissions and financial aid, the vice president for admissions and financial aid, to seek, a waiver on one or more of those requirements. I would be very hard pressed, Carol, if a dean, a VP, a director wasn't willing to work with the student, given these circumstances that they're facing. And so it's creating an inventory of what's required, trying to understand if they can meet those requirements. If not, work with those members of the admissions office to seek waivers for those things that might not be, what students and families might not be able to.
So in a way, one of the gifts of this really challenging time, one of the gifts of COVID in this instance is there's greater trust between colleges and students. You don't, less things that you have to prove through outside parties, and more trusting students to advocate for themselves. And also, I've heard this from other people as well, just like more collaboration between colleges and counselors and students about how to get students to really the best colleges they can, with the financial aid they need, scholarships rather than loans, so they don't graduate with a lot of debt. So maybe we'll come back to financial aid in a second. But sticking with COVID, should everyone answer, the Common App has a COVID-19 question, which they, really came to a consensus very quickly, and it really covers anything, any kind of special circumstances, your family, your school, your activities. Should everyone answer that question?
Well, when I look at the prompt, it asks students to complete the prompt if they've been adversely affected by COVID-19. And I'm staring at the definition of adverse right now. And it reads, preventing success or development, harmful, unfavorable. And so students should spend some time thinking about if and how they were adversely affected by, COVID-19. There are some students who have been greatly affected. They've been sick, family members have been sick, they've lost family members, people losing jobs. We can go on and on and on about how folks have been really affected. And then there are other students who might not have been able to do certain things that they would have liked to have done, but their world wasn't turned upside down. And they, need to decide if they're going to put pen to paper to answer that prompt. What are your thoughts on that, Carol?
Well, I don't think that everyone should answer it. I think that if you have faced circumstances that really have defined your year, illness, loss, it could, homelessness, discrimination, just seeing violence and having to survive violence. I think there's a lot of intense things, let's say, going on, the fires, that, so many things. There's a lot. And you could say that we've, in some respect, we've all faced them, and it's a test of how we face adversity. But then there's, people whose lives have just been completely upended. And I think that question is for those circumstances. Mm-hmm. But if you're a person who's, privileged enough that you've sort of magically ridden above it in a way that allows you to help other people and allows you, to be humble and gracious and those things, and to learn inwardness and to learn whatever, how to face you. I think those things can be woven into other essays. I think that the COVID-19 essay was designed for and should be used for, like students who have really suffered and suffered in ways that the impact is not, going to be ended easily in a couple of days or a couple of months. That, this is now something that I carry with me. So I think, I think you know who you are, and if you need it, use it. But if you don't need it, don't, you should never write, add stuff that's not asked for. You don't need to make a bigger case, I think, to get into college. Tight, clean is usually the way to go. So are there things, Joe, that students should absolutely not, should not do or should not write about this year? Like, are there things that are really faux pas this year that wouldn't come up in other circumstances?
I think for a lot of students, it's going to be easy to answer, each essay and supplement with a response revolving around COVID, Carol. I mean,
yeah, but they shouldn't do that.
I know.
They definitely shouldn't do that.
And this is me saying that this is not what to do. I'm going to encourage students to step outside the COVID bubble and answer prompts in a unique and creative way. At the same time, it's inevitable that young people are going to write about certain things. And I think my fear is that they're going to tell us how, they exhibited superhero behavior when we weren't asked to be superheroes during this time. We were asked to shelter in place, practice social distancing, take care of ourselves and each other. And if you've had a chance to produce masks and distribute them, okay, that's great. But many of us didn't have the opportunity to do so, and so we remained at home protecting ourselves and our loved ones. That's just as important as mass distribution. So what I'm saying is that there are certain things that young people were able to do during this time, but certainly, the government wasn't asking us to defy the odds and do these things. And so if, those circumstances were important for you, then, that's what you may write about. At the same time, if you can think about something else, because we're all looking to think about something else at this time, I think you would bring a breath of fresh air to us as admissions officers reading these applications for admission. Oh, look, something different. And I think,
like what you did a year ago that you want to do again, maybe, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that, people in admissions often talk about great essays having this quality of reflection in them. And I think this year more than ever, like COVID, caused us all to reflect on a lot of things, caused, I think, so many people to experience anxiety and but those sort of obvious things that happen to a lot of people. Yeah. I think you have the opportunity to just go below the surface of those things and what did it call out of me? And not what did it call out of me, as you say, like a superhero, but on an unusual day, or maybe a usual day. What was it like? What did I do?
Carol, I have to say something else. I'm on this WhatsApp chat group with a bunch of colleagues who are on the school side of the desk, the secondary school side of the desk, and they're talking about their students getting on planes and flying to places like Atlanta to take standardized tests.
That's insane.
And
I'm not going to make you say it, but that's just crazy.
I don't think that students should absolutely not be risking their health and the health of others by getting on planes, driving 6 hours to go take a test. It's unnecessary. It really is.
Yeah. No, I think that, one of the joys of my job is I get to talk to a lot of young people, and I just see so many young people who, they've like gone to a deeper register in their emotional vocabulary. Their way of thinking about themselves and the world has just shifted through all of this. And I don't know exactly like how, like there'll be new ways of talking about ourselves will be invented, and young people will invent them. And I think essays are partially an opportunity for that. I just wanted, I'd love to turn to like some of the students' questions, but before we go there, and we've talked a lot about testing, we've talked about if there's something you don't have, any aspect of college your usual dossier that you don't have, and you feel you're a strong candidate for someplace, you should just make your case and call somebody or email someone, just like do something.
Yes.
Could you talk just specifically about the role of essays this year in particular in the financial aid process? In like some parts of merit scholarships are going to be disrupted without standardized tests. That's one of the things that's the absence of standardized tests might really hurt people's opportunities in some ways and make things less equal. Can you just talk about like money? Like, I think there's a lot more stress around money, colleges, students, everybody. If you were a student, if you were a parent, how would you think that through?
So, there are some colleges and universities that have prompts that students must complete in order to, apply for those schools' respective scholarships. At Rochester, we don't have separate prompts for our scholarships. It's a process by which everything is rated, evaluated, and there's an algorithm behind the scenes that ends up producing a scholarship recommendation. And so, the personal statement, the college essay, is one that we are rating on a Likert scale, 7 being the best, 1 being, the opposite end of that spectrum. And it goes into that said algorithm. So it's important for students to be able to produce a personal statement that is high quality, written very well, no, grammatical errors, and one that sustains the reader's attention from beginning to end. And students trying to stay away from topics that are cliche and written about, often. But financial aid is a big concern for a lot of families. The cost of attending college only goes up annually. It's outpaced in inflation by a great deal. And so
again this year it's gone up.
Yep. And so admissions officers tend to be literate in areas of financial aid, but only to a certain point. So for example, you can call me up in the office and say, hey, Mr. Latimer, I got an email notification that some things are missing from my financial aid. Can you help me understand what that is? And I can go through what's called web client and tell the student, oh, you're missing that or you're missing this. And so I want students to know that most offices of admissions have admissions counselors assigned to you based on the location of your high school. Sometimes that could be based on the location of where you live, but it's mostly based on the location of your high school. So you can start that financial aid conversation with an admissions officer who will then pass you off to your financial aid counselor, which is driven generally by your last name. And you can schedule 15-minute appointments using a tool such as Calendly to generate a conversation with one of our financial aid officers assigned to you to start to develop that relationship. And those relationships are key. What you're hearing me say, Carol, is that we as admissions and financial aid officers make ourselves available to families. And it's important for students and families to engage with us to be able to help navigate this confusing, exciting, and anxious process.
Right. And even if you come from a background like I did, where like people didn't talk about money, that really it's very important and very helpful to build these relationships at colleges, both with people in admissions and also in financial aid, so that when the time comes and you need more, you know, you have a person you have a conversation with, you know, that you can say, I really want to go to the University of Rochester, but this other place offered me more money. Can you help out at all? And I think one of the smartest things you can do learn in the whole admissions process is to get comfortable talking about money. Parents and children talking about money, students in colleges talking about money, students talking to themselves about like what kind of work they want to do and whether, you know, like how much debt they can actually manage out of college. There's just a lot of
Yes, Carol, and also not being afraid to ask for more money. I mean, for example,
no, you get 0% of what you don't ask for.
Yes,
if you need something, you have to ask, whatever it is. I think that is COVID rule number one.
Yep.
Ask for help so people can help you.
Yep. Dr. Barash is my financial aid officer. I'm sitting here with my family. Can you tell me how you got to our financial aid officer? Because we're getting to a different figure. Can you walk us through how you got to this expected family contribution? Because we're seeing something different. And let them walk you through their methodology for getting there. And at the end of that conversation, you might look at your parents. I might look at my mom and dad, my grandmother, and say, oh, that's how they got to that figure. Now I get it. Now we get it. Or you may disagree with how they got to that and, decide that perhaps you might want to decide to look at another institution because they didn't meet your need. But yes, the point is, you've got to have these conversations with these professionals because we're only here to have these conversations with you.
And you're here to help. Like your whole point in life is to help students. You know, if you can't help them at Rochester, maybe you can help them somewhere else. I mean, you have a big network of people. And I think everyone's trying to help students get to the best. Everybody. It's like a team sport, not a, one-on-one game.
Yep.
Joe, I want to switch to some of the questions that were asked by students in the chat. I'm just going to let you take them first of all, even though some of them are essay questions. One of the students asked, is it okay to write about something that happened in middle school?
If you write about something that happened in middle school, you must bring it into your current life. That lesson that you learned a long time ago, that experience that you had in middle school needs to resonate with you to this day. If you keep it in middle school and you don't bring it into your contemporary existence, your current existence, then I'm not understanding the connection between your past and your current.
Yeah, let me just really reinforce that and like try to say it the same thing in a slightly different way. When I worked in admissions at Rutgers, like there were cases that were obvious, and then there was like the 60% in the middle, right, that was not obvious, and we could have admitted all of those students. And you're asking yourself all the time, what will this person contribute to, to intellectual life, to social life, to community service? Like who will this person be when they show up on my campus? And so you can't figure out what a person's going to do in college from what they did in middle school. There might be a flashback to middle school, to a moment that something really changed, and that informed something that you did later. And that might inform a specific activity or a specific opportunity that you'll take up at a specific college. Like especially the supplement should be really specific. But, colleges are looking at who's going to make a difference in their community now. And there's all sorts of different ways of contributing to community and being someone who matters in a community now and in the future. And I think that's really, if you were in the room talking to these admissions officers live, what would they need to know about you to understand who you are right now, who you're going to be a year from now when you're there, right? Like, what's your trajectory? What are your ambitions? What are your hopes? What do you contribute to other people? I think about the stories in your past that show that present and future, and then figure out how to connect the dots for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that's really, and let's say it was something really big in middle school and something, you know, scary or hard or a big challenge overcome. I'm not saying don't write about it, and I don't think Joe is either, but like, don't stop there. You need to like bring it into the present, and even with an eye sometimes to the future.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the idea. That's the move, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And then there's a question about, should you mention your major when writing your essay? If you want to bat any of these back to me, you can, but I'm really curious. You know, you read these things now all the time. I used to read them as an admissions officer. Now I read them as a person who wants students to really express their personalities.
Yep. You know, I don't, and listen, I love our back and forth, Carol. So, you know, I take a stab at something and you take a stab at something, and we both kind of feed off of each other and learn from one another. That's
yes, it's beautiful. Thank you.
I can't answer that question without trying to understand the prompt that they're trying to answer. So much of this exercise of writing the personal statement is about the prompt that they're trying to answer.
Yes.
And
yes.
and
Except the personal statement, which is really who you are as a person. Like, what do I need to know you? That first Common App prompt is really what's at the heart of all of them. It's like, what do I need to know you? If you give one essay in you, that's the one. And then everything else is specific to a college. So then you take a very different approach, right? What major? Well, what's that major called at that college? Make sure you get that right for starters.
And make sure you name the college correctly, right? So many students will write Rochester University when the prompt clearly says you're applying to the University of Rochester, enter our supplement. So I think the supplement is the appropriate place to talk about what you want to study at College X and why, and the opportunities afforded at that institution based on what's available through that program of study, et cetera. I think that's an appropriate place to do so. But again, going back to the college essay, I don't know. You really should answer the prompt in a way that allows us to understand, you know, the question that you're answering.
Yeah, a supplement is a question that, you know, you should take off from the question, but definitely answer the question and answer it specifically for the place you're answering it for sure. A student asked me today, it was actually a student's mom asked me today, what if, you know, how do I know under the current circumstances with, you know, maybe, you know, a year from now, college, like part of college will probably be virtual. Maybe that's something that's going to be true forever now too. Like, how can she help her son figure out, like, if he's ready for college? And college the way it is now, where you get like less help from other people, just being around other people and learning with other people. How do you figure that out?
Gosh, what a great question. Well, so what we're trying to do is to make ourselves, as an institution of higher education, what we're trying to do is to compensate for a lot of these activities that students can no longer engage in. So going to college and meeting new people and seeking help from, you know, faculty members, office hours, going to, you know, writing workshops and things like this. How do we deliver those things that are important to the success of our students, given the manner in which, you know, we're currently living? And I guess one thing to reflect upon is the fact that students, high school students, are also dealing with a lot of these similar issues, and thinking about, are they able to navigate these circumstances in a way that allows for success, or do they need something different in order to be successful? And I guess if the answer to the question is this manner in which we're approaching learning and being supported and making connections isn't working, then what can be instituted to help with that, if anything? And if nothing, then, you know, maybe it's a time to think about, you know, taking a gap year, doing something different for a year and preparing to maybe immerse in college a year from the supposed date of entry.
Yeah, I think it's required that students be a lot more, like, be able to work a lot more independently in college than previously. And also work, you know, figure out a lot of the things surrounding college on their own, or at least even figure out how to ask the right questions. I think there's a lot of unknown. I do think for, you know, the numbers at colleges this fall, a lot of colleges, the number of students enrolling is down. And I think that in many circumstances, you know, if you can get the money right, which I think is a big thing, and you should work towards getting the money right, that college is a great thing to do after high school, that it's still a driver of economic success. It's a driver of community engagement, and just gives you more options downstream. Like, we're, you know, everyone who's in high school now is going to have careers that we don't even know what they are yet. Like, everything's changing so fast, we just don't know. But to be ready for those changes, and to be ready to be continuously learning to face those changes, I think college is your best shot still at getting how to learn under your belt. So whatever's thrown at you, you can learn it. I think that there's ways places you can learn specific skills. There's places you can get specific experiences, but that ability to learn, that mindset for learning, I hope that that's really still one of the things that colleges can generate for students, if not in person, then virtually. They ought to be able to create a virtual learning environment and a love of learning through a virtual environment. I think that that's, you know, I might sound old-fashioned, but that's really, I think the most important things about college aren't the content. It's learning about learning.
Yes, that is very true. And I'm envisioning, Carol, that there will be some families that decide to do an alternative learning approach, perhaps that first year out of high school, maybe someplace local, someplace that's going to be virtual, where they then decide to spend the remainder of their 3 years at a place that they've always dreamed of going. I mean, there's different ways in my mind to approach this 4-year education. And for some students, it might mean that first year staying close to home, et cetera, and then the last 3 years transferring to a different institution. So one size doesn't fit all. I think everybody has to approach it all very differently based on needs and circumstances.
And it depends a lot on just what happens. You know, can we travel?
Yes.
Can we not travel?
Yep.
I myself took a year off between sophomore and junior years of college because I was still burnt out from high school, and I was, you know, I really needed time. First of all, I needed to work, and I needed just time to kind of sort things out. And I often think that, you know, kind of 2 years of learning and then a year of work and then a couple more years of learning. Like, I think that if you have a plan, that breaking it up can be really, really valuable. Joe, I want to ask, you know, we're coming to the end of our chat tonight, and I want to ask you, you know, you live and breathe admissions, but I'm wondering, you know, there's more to life than admissions. There's more to life than college. I wonder what life advice you want to give, what other advice, non-college, non-admissions advice you want to give to the young people who are here tonight.
When I get this question in different ways, I think about Shrek. And what Shrek said to the donkey, whose name I'm not remembering, he said, we're going on a quest. And I think that life is a quest. And, you know, you're applying to college, well, you're navigating high school, you're getting to and through college, and it's a journey. The journey doesn't end when you graduate from college. This quest, this journey continues. And I think what we do is we take everything that we learn along the way, keep it available to us as this journey of ours, this quest of ours continues to unfold. I remember having to sit down and write an essay in person at the college that I attended. I was an applicant, and I said something to the effect like, I'm going to be a business person, I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to have a family. And it seemed like at that moment in time, at the age of 17, that was it. I graduate from college, I own a business, I'm successful, and that's it. That's so not true of what my life has become. My life has become so much more than this thing that had a bow on it once I graduated with a master's degree. It became a series of questions. What's next? What's out there for me to do? Where can I go? Where do I belong? And everything that I've learned from other people, from my family, from friends, from mentors, has helped me. You know, it's this stuff in my backpack that I reach into to utilize to help me navigate this continued quest of mine.
I'm so glad that our quest crossed at Bronx High School of Science. I think it probably was 2010. That was great in that lobby, remember? I remember like that, exactly where we both were. Yeah, and all the discussions we've had and the plans we've written on tablecloths, paper tablecloths with pens in various restaurants in New York. You know, Joe, I feel so lucky to count you as a friend and a colleague. And I know how much that you just want to help students be their biggest and boldest self. And that's what we're both about. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your sensitive answers to, you know, complicated questions, and for being there for students when they really need you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with your students, with you and you know, the Story 2 community. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my email address in the chat box here.
Great.
So if the students, you know, would like to reach out to me with a burning question that I didn't have the chance to get to this evening, I'll make sure, Carol, that I copy you on the response, because you know, it's important for the banter to continue as we answer questions for the young people. So my best to everyone, please be safe, continue to take care of yourselves and your family. We're thinking of you. Thank you for thinking of us. Best wishes to all.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you all, students. If there's anything that I can do to advise you and help you, you can reach out to me or to get started at story2.com. Thanks for being with us tonight, and I look forward to hearing your stories. Take care.